To acquire beauty, study the sacred scriptures. Cordovero says that the way to acquire beauty, the attribute of Tiferet, is to study the Torah. To me, this includes studying the teachings of the saints, ascended masters, and mystics of all time. Cordovero warns that we will not attain beauty if we entertain spiritual pride. If we exalt ourselves above the poor, the ignorant, those whose minds are weak, and those who are learning from us, we will block the flow of God's beauty into the world. But if we are pleasantly disposed toward others, teaching them as much as they can absorb, beauty will pour its flow into the pupils according to their capacities. You may not think of yourself as a teacher, but we all play this role more often than we imagine. Whether we are teaching our coworkers a new task, instructing a child, or sharing a word of wisdom with someone we chance to meet. Cordovero goes on to say that when we debate our spiritual teachings, we must do so for the sake of heaven and not for our own secular gain. To acquire endurance and majesty, support students of the sacred scriptures. To acquire endurance and majesty, the qualities Cordovero attributes to Netzah and Hod, he says he would supply students of the Torah, the world's sacred scriptures, with all they need to continue their studies. This may involve giving them money or doing other good deeds to help them. Do not disparage their learning, he says, but encourage them to work. Do all that you can, whether little or much, for everything you do to honor and strengthen the Torah and to arouse people's hearts to the Torah. And the pure teachings of the world's major religions is firmly rooted in the Sephirah, Netzah, and Hod. Cordovero also advises those who study the Torah to be prepared to learn from all people. To acquire foundation, guard against speech that evokes sinful thoughts. To acquire the attribute of Yesod, which is foundation, Cordovero advises us to guard against speech that gives rise to sexual or sinful thoughts. Needless to say, one should not speak obscenities, but he should take care not to utter even clean words if they give rise to sexual thoughts. Right, Cordovero. The main precaution is to guard oneself from sexual imaginings. Cordovero acknowledges that there is a time and place for sexual activities within the holy circle of marriage. Another Kabbalistic text affirms that sexual union under the right circumstances is sacred. Sexual union is holy and pure when performed in the right way, at the right time, and with the right intention. When sexual union is for the sake of heaven, there is nothing as holy or pure. The union of man and woman, when it is right, is the secret of civilization. Thereby, one becomes a partner with God in the act of creation. This is the secret meaning of the saying of the sages. When a man unites with his wife in holiness, the divine presence, Shekinah, is between them. When a man and a woman unite and their thought joins the beyond, that thought draws down the upper light. While many spiritual teachers like Cordovero believe that sexual activity in balance and in the right cortex is healthy, they also teach that becoming preoccupied with sex can slow down our spiritual growth. This is because the energy we exchange through sexual union is the same energy we use to climb the tree of life and reunite with God. When we dissipate this energy through excessive sexual thoughts or practices, we do not have as much spiritual fire to propel us upward. We can regain and conserve that fire through our devotions, prayers, and spiritual practice. To acquire sovereignty, do not take pride in your belongings. Cordovera says that the way to acquire sovereignty or kingdom, the attribute of Malkut and Shekinah, is to never take pride in your belongings, but always to behave like a beggar. Even if you are wealthy, you can train yourself to behave in this way, he says, by reminding yourself that none of both your possessions are attached to you and that you require the mercies of heaven at all times. Your family and your belongings are not what will carry you back to God, says Cordovera. What can a man's wife and children do for him when he is judged before the Creator or when his soul departs? Can they accompany him beyond the grave? Or what use are they to him from the entrance of the grave and onwards? Our ascent to God is indeed a solo flight. Cordovera teaches that we can also acquire sovereignty if we fear the Lord, perform marital duties in a spirit of holiness, and behave in such a way that Shekinah, the divine presence of God, will always cleave to us. He says Shekinah will unite with us when we develop the qualities of the Sephirah, study the Torah, and follow its precepts. Another way to acquire the quality of sovereignty, he says, is to divorce yourself from your home to study the Torah. Aryeh Kaplan says that Cordovera practiced a form of meditation known as divorce. Kaplan writes, no mere theorist, Cordovera was actively engaged in Kabbalah meditations through a method known as Gershon, or divorce. We know very little of this method. Most probably, it consisted of meditating on a given scripture, or perhaps repeating it over and over like a mantra until one can relate to it on a high meditative state. One would then gain deep insight into it without having to analyze it logically. The word divorce in this concept most probably meant divorce from the physical, even though it also obviously had the connotation of separation and seclusion from inhabited places. Undoubtedly, those who practice this technique also divorce themselves from their wives by remaining celibate for periods of time so they could devote all of their energy to their meditations.